It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. An apology at last. Police in Scotland admit they have failed women as a serial rapist is found guilty of murdering sex worker Emma Caldwell nearly 2 decades ago.
Emma Caldwell, her family, and many other victims were let down by policing in 2005. For that, we are sorry.
Inside Ecuador's notorious prisons, our chief correspondent visits one jail at the heart of the country's war on criminal drug lords.
95% of them are in prison for gang-related crimes or terrorist-related crimes, as it's now being designated by the government.
Infected blood campaigners bring their protests to Parliament as victims and their families call for the urgent payment of compensation. Prince Harry vows to appeal after losing his High Court challenge about the level of security he's entitled to when he's in the UK. A nuclear fusion machine, which at one point was the hottest point in the solar system, is decommissioned after 40 years. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. Police in Scotland have today apologised to the family of murdered sex worker Emma Caldwell as her killer, described as one of Britain's most prolific sex offenders, was finally convicted after more than 2 decades. Ian Packer has been jailed for at least 36 years for dozens of crimes, including the rape of 9 other women. Some of his victims have told Sky News they were ignored by police, leaving a predator on the streets to kill. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis has our first report.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder. The spot where sex workers were attacked, where Emma Caldwell was strangled and dumped naked in this ditch.
Whether she had threatened to report you to the police or whether you killed her whilst acting out some evil fantasy, you murdered her in circumstances which must have been truly terrifying, alone with the man who had already indecently assaulted her, in the dark, deprived of her phone, and miles from any prospect of help.
You have been arrested on suspicion of murder.
This is the moment Ian Packer was finally removed from the streets, prevented from harming again.
Not sexually violent
Who has
man
raped
whatsoever.
women.
I've never raped anyone in my life.
Ian Packer was such a confident liar, he took part in this documentary protesting his innocence.
Not at all, I know nothing about it.
Did you kill Emma?
No, I never. I could look you in the eye and say no, I had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
That was the biggest lie of them all. But this court finally got to the truth. A predator guilty of one of the worst campaigns of sex crimes this country has ever seen.
I feel as if I can breathe again. This man is gone. And I hope it gets long enough that he can't harm anyone else. He'll always be the same, he's not going to change. It's my daughter. And I'm going to stand up for her. It didn't make any difference to me what she did. They made a mistake when they thought Emma wasn't worth anything, because Emma was worth an awful lot.
Packer was a familiar face here in the red light district over the decades, prowling the streets, a habitual user of sex workers. He was interviewed several times by police over the years and even admitted taking Emma from these streets down to the woods 40 miles away for sex. But it took them 17 years before he was eventually arrested, during which time he continued to abuse. But now Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent years before Emma was even murdered, and it appears nothing was done about it.
He tried to force me to my knees. I was terrified. I met 2 police officers that I knew. I told them about the attack and I got jailed for a Section 46, which is prostitution. They never took a statement.
For 2003, the police were getting warned about him. So back then, if the police had just listened to the girls who came forward and told them, a lot of the other sexual crimes would never have happened. And to be honest, Emma could still be alive. They just looked down on us I've been raped. I've been held hostage. Nothing would ever happen to the men. They've got blood in their hands.
Yes, they've got blood.
They have got blood in their hands for this.
A toxic culture of misogyny and corruption meant that the police failed so many women and girls who came forward to speak against Packer. Instead of receiving justice and compassion, they were humiliated, they were dismissed, and in some instances, they were arrested.
And now, an admission of failure.
Emma Caldwell, her family, and many other victims were let down by policing in 2005. For that, we are sorry. The lack of investigation until 2015 caused unnecessary distress to her family and all of those women who came forward to report sexual violence.
My Emma.
This has always been about Emma Caldwell and the pain endured by her mum for so long. She finally has justice.
What I really want is Emma.
Connor Gillis, Sky News, Glasgow.
That's what I really want.
And Sky's Sadia Chowdhury joins us live now from Glasgow. Sadia, the family have had to wait nearly 20 years to get justice. Now the killer is now behind bars, but what next for the family?
So Ian Packer starts his 36-year sentence today, and as he does that, the spotlight shifts to the police. Police Scotland tonight under scrutiny, not only over their conduct in this investigation, but also their attitude towards violence towards women. This evening, while they spoke, they refused to say that it is embarrassing to have taken 19 years to bring this man to justice. But they noted in their apology, in that statement of apology, they noted that it was the efforts of Emma Caldwell's mother, Margaret, that led to us being where we are today. She'd campaigned tirelessly to have the case reopened and reinvestigated. And here on the steps outside the court after sentencing, her family's statements very much had that similar sort of sentiment. They listed the police failings. They talked about the anguish that's had on them as a family, but also on other victims. Some of those victims have died before seeing justice, and they called for an independent inquiry into the police's conduct in this long-running investigation.
Sadia Chowdhury with the latest there from Glasgow. Sadia, thank you. Well, the French Coast Guard says one person has died and 2 others are missing after an incident involving a small boat in the Channel. RNLI lifeboats were launched this afternoon and the search is set to be ongoing. Sky's Daniel Henry is live in Dover for us tonight. I mean, obviously at night the search will always be infinitely harder. What else do we know on this?
Well, this began earlier today from Calais. A small boat had left from Calais, making its way over to the Channel, and around midday today that boat got into trouble, and there were patrol boats that have been sent out that have managed to help some of these people to safety. 56 people managed to get onto that patrol boat, but when they got on there they told the rescuers that 3 people had been in the sea, and at that point 2 Navy ships and a helicopter were scrambled from the French authorities to try and find these people, and sadly they located the body, an unresponsive body of a woman who was pronounced dead. 2 more people, as I say, out there in the waters, and we understand that the search operation is still going on. They're still trying to find these 2 people who they believe are out there, but in these conditions, getting around the Channel is treacherous at the best of times. So in these conditions, it will be almost impossible, you might think, to find these people alive tonight.
Daniel Henry with the latest from Dover on that search mission. Daniel, thank you. Sky News has been on the front line of Ecuador's battle to destroy the country's drug cartels. And today we bring you a special report from inside the prisons, notorious for holding some of the most dangerous and influential drug lords. After years of bloodshed, the Ecuadorian government is desperately trying to crack down on the reign of terror that has gripped the nation for decades. Well, in January, the president declared a state of emergency lasting 60 days after a well-known gang leader escaped from prison. Many jails in the country are controlled by gangs, but in the city of Esmeraldas, the military has broken that stranglehold. Leaders of one gang, known as the Big Tigers, were using the city's main jail as their headquarters. Well, but in January, the military stormed the facility in an operation that took a year to plan. Now the army has allowed in our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsay. Here is the second of his special reports.
Just weeks ago, Sky News walking into this prison would have been actually impossible. Ecuador's gangs were in complete control, were armed and occasionally visited their cells just to sleep. The transformation at the hands of the country's military is astonishing. And these are the most serious criminals. In this wing, the prisoners wait in line for permission to eat after they said prayers. In other wings, they're called forward cell by cell to collect their food and return, again waiting for permission to begin. Now reclassified as terrorists, huge numbers of gang members have been rounded up and locked up. This prison in the city of Esmeraldas was actually the operating headquarters of the gang Los Tiguerones, the Big Tigers. The Tigers are behind bars now. This is the maximum security wing of the prison. There's just over 1,400 men here. What's interesting, 95% of them are in prison for gang-related crimes or terrorist-related crimes, as it's now being designated by the government. What's interesting, though, is also that, unlike other prisons, they're all in the same gang. This is the Big Tigers gang, which everyone in this prison is part of it. And they're the ones who've been locked up. And of course, it sort of indicates just how much through society the gangs have spread. The military says they'd planned the takeover of the prison for a year. They were just waiting for the orders to move in.
It's totally different right now, because right now we have the control here. Before, the inmates got the control.
Taking control of the prisons is widely regarded as the key to cracking the problems caused by the gangs and the cartels. Taking them off the streets, imposing discipline. Including instructing them to chant slogans praising their country, is all part of the strategy to weaken the gang's hold of the barrios. Whether it will work or not is far from certain. Outside of prison, it's beach party time in Ecuador. A party that still needs protection, though. What can only be described as bizarre is the presence of heavily armed Marines patrolling the beaches and beach bars to the sound of booming Latin American pop music. Just a few weeks ago, car bombs and murders were so common here that the beaches, bars and restaurants were empty. The gangs had taken over, but now, at the very least, they've gone underground or to jail. This man, Javier Butron, the governor of Esmeraldas, is credited with bringing about this transformation. A former chief of police here, Ecuador's president tasked him with turning things round, bringing him out of retirement.
Normal people it's necessary that they recover the liberty because they was in the houses, and now we can see a lot of people here. We can enjoy how the families are working here.
Day and night, the governor, albeit with permanent security, makes sure that he is present and visible, though the gangs want him dead. People treat him like a rock star, however. The crackdown on gangs is just part of a project to change Ecuador's future. It's working for now, but it really won't be easy. Stuart Ramsay, Sky News, Esmeraldas, Ecuador.
Victims of the infected blood scandal have staged a protest in Westminster calling for urgent action on compensation payments. The infected blood inquiry made its recommendations on compensation last April. Since then, campaigners say another 82 people have died and still no sign of the payments. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has been speaking to some of the families calling for justice.
How are you? I'm feeling a little better, so I'm still coughing up a bit of blood. I've had a scan, so we'll all keep the fingers crossed. I love them all.
These were some of the last words Barry said to his family. A day later, he died. In the same week, he was told he would finally receive some compensation from the government as a victim of the infected blood scandal. His wife, Deborah, has received interim compensation, but she continues to fight for others who haven't.
I can't think that the last 30-odd years or Barry dying is for nothing. So I have to have that hope. Without that hope, then I'd be lost.
Debbie is grieving for her husband and fighting for justice. And as an NHS nurse for 47 years, she lives with the guilt of possibly using contaminated blood products on her patients.
The chances of one of those blood transfusions, just one of them being infected, is incredibly high. And that does not sit easy with me, even now. It's a horrible thought.
Last Easter, the blood inquiry instructed the government to pay compensation to bereaved children and parents. A year later, they're still waiting.
The government has accepted the moral case for compensation, and which is why on Monday, in the other place, we committed to bringing forward amendments at report stage of the Victim and Prisoners Bill with the intention of speeding up the implementation of our response to the infected blood inquiry.
Simon Hamilton and his twin brother were both infected with contaminated blood products. Simon died on Christmas Day last year without seeing justice.
I feel let down. I feel this government has let all of the victims down. It's keeping us on the long finger. I suspect that they're waiting for the next government who come in to deal with this.
The final blood inquiry report is due to be published in May, but campaigners say its recommendations are already known.
The scandal that was allowed to happen 30 or 40 years ago could have been addressed, it could have been mitigated. And instead, hundreds of people have died waiting for compensation or justice.
The question being asked is how many more will not live to see justice served. Ashish Joshi, Sky News in Westminster.
Prince Harry says he will appeal against the High Court ruling today over his personal security when he's in the UK. His lawyers had argued that he was being singled out and treated less favourably in the decision to downgrade the level of his taxpayer-funded protection. But in a ruling today, the judge rejected the Duke of Sussex's case, warning that this report from our royal correspondent Laura Bundock contains flash photography.
For the Sussexes, security is a highly contentious and hotly contested subject. It started when they left the UK and their working royal roles. This one of their last official engagements. A security committee decided Harry should have a bespoke arrangement. Taxpayer-funded protection on a case-by-case basis. He argued this was unreasonable, unlawful and procedurally unfair. But a High Court judge disagreed. Harry is now appealing.
I don't think his prospects of success are at all high. In fact, I would say they're zero. This is a very compelling judgment. It's very detailed, but it's very thorough. The legal reasoning is, in my view, pretty unimpeachable.
Harry wasn't in court, but we heard he felt security changes made it difficult to bring his family to Britain. He flew solo to the UK following his father's cancer diagnosis and has hinted he's other trips planned.
The World Child Awards is our chance to celebrate the extraordinary strength and spirit of young people with complex medical conditions from across the United Kingdom.
No comment on his court case, but 2 new video messages from Harry, promoting and supporting charitable endeavours.
Josh, you are a truly remarkable human. There is no one in the world who deserves this more. You are the personification of resilience.
Harry's legal team say he's not asking for preferential treatment. All he wants is a fair and lawful application of the rules. Another day in court beckons. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Voters in Rochdale will go to the polls tomorrow in what's being described as possibly the most chaotic by-election ever. No fewer than 3 former Labour figures are standing, including the former Labour candidate Azhar Ali, who was suspended from the party over anti-Semitic remarks. From Rochdale, our political correspondent Serena Barker-Singh reports.
In the foothills of the Pennines, a town plagued with bad press and bad luck.
There's housing issues that we need to deal with. There's homeless issues that we deal with. There's child protection issues that we need to deal with.
And now a by-election a day away.
You feel like some candidates are not here for Rochdale?
Oh, no, I don't think any of them are. They're all here for what they can get.
Old habits remain.
I am a Labour supporter, so I will vote Labour even though there isn't a candidate now.
Chaos descending.
It's been turned into a little bit of a circus, I think.
The disappointment here is palpable.
We're like the forgotten corner of England, you know.
We don't count. We don't count.
Labour headquarters in Rochdale now lie empty. The party was forced to disown their candidate, Azhar Ali, after alleged anti-Semitic remarks. He now runs as an independent. It means the by-election's central character is now this man.
The bookies seem to think so, but we're not taking anything for granted.
George Galloway has condemned Azhar Ali's remarks, but the Jewish Labour movement have expressed concerns over his bid to return to Parliament.
Do you understand their concerns?
If I return to Parliament, it will be because I've been elected to Parliament. And if I'm elected to Parliament, I'll be saying the same things that I've been saying for more than 50 years on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Don't expect me to change.
Vote Simon Danchuk to stop Galloway from becoming the MP.
Is that Simon Danchuk?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this?
I've got nothing to say about it. He's a disreputable individual that will get a risible vote.
That individual is the 3rd former Labour politician on the ballot paper, Simon Danchuk, suspended from the Labour Party for sending explicit messages to a 17-year-old girl. He's now running for Reform UK.
Do you think the people of Rochdale have been given a real choice in all of this?
The Labour guy's not really in the race. The Green guy's been sacked by the Green Party. The Liberals are a spent force in Rochdale. The Conservative guy's been on holiday for most of the campaign. I mean, the choice is between me and Galloway, and there is a real difference between what I will stand for, which is Rochdale, and he will stand for Gaza.
Send a local lad to Parliament.
The Conservative candidate Paul Ellison, who says he's running on a local platform, said he was too busy for an interview with Sky News. The Liberal Democrats say they're now the only credible major party left in the race.
What needs to be done here isn't about characters, it's about graft, it's about getting the services up to standard, and it's about helping people.
While this battle is only one day away, it's only a matter of months before a general election, when the fight for Rochdale will start all over again. Serena Barker-Singh, Rochdale.
And here is a reminder of all the candidates taking part in the Rochdale by-election. There they are. And voting starts at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, some breaking news this evening. In the last few minutes, the Supreme Court in the United States said it will decide whether the former President Donald Trump can be prosecuted on charges that he interfered with the 2020 election. Let's go straight to our U.S. correspondent in Washington, D.C., Mark Stone. So, Mark, focus on the Supreme Court once again when it comes to Donald Trump's future. Talk us through this latest development.
Yeah, we always knew the Supreme Court would be a central part in this extraordinary journey for Donald Trump and his many cases, so much legal jeopardy for him. This is a big moment, I think, in that journey, a decision by the Supreme Court that they will hear the case and will decide whether or not Donald Trump is immune from prosecution. This all relates to the attack on the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021, and Donald Trump's involvement in that. It is, in a sense, the biggest of all the cases against him, the most pivotal, the most consequential. Now, the reason it is so significant now is because the case has, which hasn't clearly yet started, has wound its way up through different courts, as different courts have decided he is not immune from prosecution, and he has then appealed to a higher court. It has come now to the Supreme Court. Many assumed that the Supreme Court wouldn't take on the case. They have decided that they will. They will decide whether or not he is immune from prosecution, and that means that it will be many, many months before the case even goes to court, if it indeed does, goes to trial, I should say. That means it may not happen now before the election in November, which for many people will be a big, big problem. You have the prospect of an election, of a candidate for president running for election, accused of insurrection, and yet doesn't go for trial for that alleged insurrection before he is potentially re-elected.
Pretty extraordinary stuff. Mark Stone with the latest from Washington, D.C. Mark, thank you. Now, the funeral of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny will take place in Moscow on Friday. His widow, Yulia Navalnaya, has addressed the European Parliament, saying her husband's body had been abused and calling for Russia's President Vladimir Putin to be held to account.
If you really want to defeat Putin, you have to become an innovator. You have to stop being boring. You can...
Christian Horner, the boss of the Red Bull Formula One team, will stay in his job after being cleared of allegations of misconduct towards a female member of staff. Red Bull said it was confident that the investigation has been fair, rigorous and impartial. Horner, who's married to the former Spice Girl Geri Halliwell, will continue to lead Red Bull at the season's first race in Bahrain this weekend. Now, after 40 years of fusion science, a world-leading machine designed to replicate the conditions inside a burning star is shutting down. Today, the decommissioning of the UK's Jet nuclear fusion reactor began. It will now be used for a range of scientific and engineering work to help develop sustainable fusion power plants of the future. Our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, reports.
This pink glow is a pulse of super-hot plasma hurtling round a machine called Jet, as it set a world record for generating energy from nuclear fusion. But this was its last goodbye. Jet, the joint European torus, has been at the forefront of fusion research for 40 years. When construction began, it wasn't certain if this kind of machine could generate fusion energy. Containing a swirling plasma with magnets likened to holding jelly in a net is a mind-blowing challenge. But at 150 million degrees centigrade, the hottest thing in the solar system, that's even harder. But they proved it's possible.
Jet has covered so many areas of physics and of engineering that it really is the basis for quite a lot of what we are planning now for a future fusion power plant.
This is one of the projects she means, ITER, an international collaboration to build the world's largest fusion reactor under construction in France. Jet's engineering has paved the way too. This remote handling team will soon be busy dismantling the mildly radioactive metal tiles inside Jet.
But it's also one of the important legacies of the project, because what they've learned here is being applied to new, larger fusion projects.
After leaving the EU, the UK chose to stop being a fully paid-up member of the international ITER project. Jet's farewell celebration tinged with uncertainty. The government opting instead to go it alone, funding our own new fusion power plant in Nottinghamshire.
The advice that I receive from the amazing people working here at Culham and the people that I'm talking to around the world involved in fusion right now. Fusion by 2040 on the grid is a reality, and it's going to happen here in the UK before it happens anywhere else in the world.
That's bold.
Very.
Fusion power at a national scale, fossil-free and virtually limitless, is a lot further off than that. But JET's legacy is that it should, one day, be a reality. Tom Clark, Sky News, Oxfordshire.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Now, among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front page of The Eye about the refusal to raise Prince Harry's security level when he visits the UK. The headline, "You're not that special." We'll be right back. This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, let's take a look at our top stories. Police in Scotland have apologised over delays in catching a man found guilty of murdering a woman in Glasgow nearly 2 decades ago and of sexual offences against more than 20 other women. One person has died and 2 others are missing after an incident involving a small boat in the Channel. And victims of the infected blood scandal have called for faster action on compensation after more than 80 people died since an inquiry made recommendations last year. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome both. They'll be with us from now until midnight. Well, let's see what is on some of those front pages. Reacting to the High Court's denial of Prince Harry's request to have his police protection reinstated while he's in the UK, the Metro carries the scathing headline, "You are not that special." Looking ahead to the budget, the Eye says the Chancellor has decided he can't afford to address unfairness in the child benefit system because he thinks cutting taxes is more urgent. The Telegraph says he's also set to scrap non-dom tax status to help fund those tax cuts. The Mirror, meanwhile, speaks to the shadow Chancellor, who says if Labour wins the next election, it will inherit the worst economic crisis since the Second World War. Their headline, "Never had it so bad." Let them eat flakes. The Star seizes on comments from the boss of Kellogg's that people struggling with the cost of living crisis should eat cereal for dinner. The Guardian carries a study on ultra-processed foods, which it says has found a list of 32 damaging effects that include heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. The Times says that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wants police to crack down on what he calls disruptive protests over the war in Gaza, which he thinks amount to mob rule. That story is also the front page lead in tomorrow's Daily Mail. The FT leads with a report on leaked Kremlin files suggesting that Russia could resort to nuclear weapons at a very early stage in any conflict with another major world power. And The Sun goes with news. The Formula One team boss, Christian Horner, and his wife, Jerry Halliwell, are relieved that he's been cleared of improper behavior towards a female employee. And a reminder, as always, that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. As I mentioned, we're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Thank you so much for being with us. OK, let's start with the front page of The Telegraph, and actually a couple of papers leading with the budget preview, which is in a couple of days. Let's look at the headline of The Telegraph, ditching non-dom status to allow tax cuts. So Hunt looks at ditching non-dom tax perk. Kevin, starting with you, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I'm sure his non-dom wife will be thrilled. It's also on the front of the Times and the FT. So whoever's briefed it has certainly gone to those papers. And what's extraordinary is Labour is proposing to end non-dom status. Thought initially it could raise $3.6 billion a year. They've cut that down to $2 billion now because there'd be a 4-year grace period for anybody. And these are people who live in Britain but have considerable assets abroad, and they can save their assets abroad from tax. But it looks as if, according to these briefings, I'll still be surprised if it happens, the Chancellor is thinking of stealing Labour's clothes and raise money for other tax cuts by doing this, by at the same time still saying he'd be competitive. Hunt, Sunak, they've all attacked Labour's plan, so I would be surprised if they adopted it themselves.
Claire?
Yes, I mean, it's very interesting. It's quite a surprise. Jeremy Hunt's obviously already pinched Labour's childcare policies to offer parents a better deal. So maybe they are parking their tanks on Labour's lawn. It's an interesting one to go for, though, because it's never been particularly popular with the Tory party. They get lots of donations from non-doms, and many of their vote, people who support them are going to be wealthy individuals, and if you're a Tory, you're going to argue that having higher tax brackets, taxing people lots, scrapping statuses that allow them to, that cost people more money, deters people from coming to the UK, would deter high net wealth individuals from being in the UK. Yeah. So it's an interesting policy for them to pursue, but I wonder if there are concerns about the amount of headroom that the Chancellor has. He's under huge pressure from his backbenchers to cut taxes. So maybe they're looking around to see other ways that they can pay for tax cuts to give the backbenchers what they want and to pave a way for a future election.
If he doesn't do it, he's now giving Labour political cover. if Labour bring it in, he does it, well, you know, there we are. George Osborne, when he was Chancellor in the coalition years, he brought in a relatively small charge to keep your non-dom status. But as I say, one of the big beneficiaries of being a non-dom has been Rishi Sunak's wife. Although she's now kind of suspended the status in agreeing to pay
taxes that she doesn't even need to pay.
Yeah, but she hasn't given up, as I understand it, the actual status. She's suspended it and just paying an equivalent amount.
Let's take a look at some of the other angles that are coming out of the budget. So in the eye, this headline, budget won't fix the UK's unfair £50,000 child benefit rule, so Hunt can afford tax cuts. Basically, the Chancellor doesn't have enough spare money to change child benefit charges that hit middle-income families. And while we look at that, I'd also like to pull out the front page of the Mirror, which has got the Shadow Chancellor saying, "We've never had it so bad. The Tories have smashed the windows, broken the door, and are now burning the house down. We'll inherit the worst situation since the war." Claire.
Yes, so the Eye, this story about child benefit rule, there's a lot of people who've complained about this. It means that parents, if you have a single parent earning more than £50,000, they have to pay back the child benefit, but a couple earning £49,000 a year each doesn't have to. Lots of people are criticising this as unfair, and it's something that I think the Treasury has been looking at. But clearly, we're in the March to budget day. It's imminent, it's next week. And the Treasury are going to be focusing on what they can do. And it's clear from this splash, it sounds like the Treasury aren't going to be able to change this unfair rule because they won't have the money to do it, frankly. And they're clearly prioritising, as we say, tax cuts and other things to keep Tory backbenchers happy. And we'll have to see if it's a winning policy.
This was an unfairness introduced by George Osborne again when he was Chancellor early in the coalition years, because it's all about paying child benefit to children. It's it's £24 for the first child, £15.90 a week for another child. I don't think those rates have changed much since the unfairness came in, because if you've got two people, 49,000 each, you can have a household income of 98,000. You keep all your child benefit, but next door there might be one parent on 50,000, and I think the taper goes until 60 or 70,000 when you lose it all. But the unfairness has always been there, and it's been held down because it was at the 50,000 figure a dozen years ago. So you think what's happened since then in terms of inflation and pay rises, more and more people will be pulled in to what is a clear unfairness.
And I guess if we look at that statement by Rachel Reeves, front page of the Mirror, never had it so bad. I mean, it seems like all the tax cuts here and there are really tinkering around the fact that there doesn't seem to be much money left.
Yeah, I can never remember Labour saying we're going to inherit a golden
in fairness.
time whenever they replace the Tories. But I think there is something in it this time. Britain's in recession, taxes are at a record high. The overall take, productivity is low, public services are really under strain. So it would be a poor inheritance, but interestingly, Labour has already closed off raising the income tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, no wealth tax, no mansion tax. So apart from closing a few loopholes, I can't see what she'll do. And maybe she's going to lose non-dom as well. The £2 billion she was expecting to get from it. But she's right. It's a poor inheritance. 1997, when Labour came in, the economy was doing quite well.
Yeah. Well, yes. Labour are going to say this, aren't they? The Tories have smashed the economy. Everything's terrible. And they're right in some respects. Things are really bad, and the economy's not doing that well. But as Kevin points out, what are Labour going to do that's any different? Because they don't have any, under Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor's fiscal rules, Labour can't spend any money that doesn't meet their rules, which means they're not going to have money to invest in public services. They're not going to have money to change all this around. They're going to have to hope that the economy is better when the election's called, which is what Rishi Sunak will be hoping for before he calls the election.
She's taken images too that Cameron and Osborne used in 2010 when they accused Labour of not fixing the roof when the sun was shining. all of a sudden, you know, you've got the windows smashed, the door down, and burning the whole house down. It's not just the roof, a bit more.
We've got just a minute 30 to look at this story, front page of the Daily Mail. So, Claire, I might ask you about it. Prime Minister tells police chiefs time to end mob rule. And Rishi Sunak called police chiefs to Downing Street yesterday, and it's all about imposing mob rule, and it's all about, of course, the pro-Palestine marches.
Yes, so there's a huge concern in the government about the toll of these marches. They're almost every other weekend, and they're taking a huge... it's costing a fortune to police them. I think it's 12 million or something. And there are concerns in government ranks that they've not got enough money to do all of this. And
so it's about money, Kevin.
It's not mob rule, though. I mean, you can be against the marches and they create disruption, I get that, and there's always a fringe who shout very obscene things, but it's not mob, that's not mob rule. I think going to Tobias Ellwood's house in Bournemouth, that was mobby, but around Westminster, I've seen worse times over Brexit and the anti-vaxxers over COVID.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Stay with us. Coming up, Prince Harry suffers a setback at the High Court. We'll discuss that next.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky's West of England correspondent.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. We help you to understand the world with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. OK, let's go to the front page of the Metro. Story about Prince Harry. Quite a brutal headline, I think.
Yeah.
We can pull it up. There it is. You are not that special, and this is all about him being entitled, or rather not being entitled to police protection when he's in the UK. He felt he was hard done by. A judge did not agree, Claire.
Yes, so this is the High Court has ruled that he is not entitled to proper full-time royal protection. So if you're a working member of the royal family, you're entitled to full protection. He's not. He obviously decided not to do this anymore. He moved to the US. But this is about when he comes back, whether he's entitled to proper protection. And the Home Office and I think there's a group called RAVEC, aren't they? There's you know, they have like police serving on them and the Home Office, and they decided that he would only be entitled to bespoke care, so he'd be treated to bespoke security. So he'd be treated like other VIPs when he came to the UK. He appealed against his judgment, took them to court, and the High Court's ruled in the government's favour. And he's now appealing this, but I think there's an estimate he's run up £1 million in legal bills.
I mean, a decision's been made, but do you think, I mean, to both of you, do you think he had a point that maybe he does need it?
Well, I can...
No, look, he gets it, but it's just... But it's bespoke. They assess the threat and then they look after him if need be. He's in the States, where every other person has a gun. I would have thought you were more in danger there. He pays for his security there. If he wants extra security when he comes, why should we as taxpayers have to foot that bill? Because he boasted he killed or admitted he killed 25 people in Afghanistan. You can...
Because that's the thing, he says Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, well, don't say these things. In one way, I admired his honesty and lifting the curtain, lifting the veil and telling us what actually goes on when you fight. But if you do that, of course, there are potential consequences. But look, I'm sure you're safer in Britain than the US. Just look at the difference in gun deaths.
Yeah.
But I don't see why he thinks, right, I'm going to live over there, I'm going to make all my money, but then I want all the privileges that I had before.
So he is appealing. We'll see how that goes. Let's go to The Guardian now, front page. Largest review of ultra-processed food warns of 32 damaging effects. And this is actually a massive study on the impact of ultra-processed food. And, it's not good for you, which I guess perhaps some of us might have, come to our own conclusion on that. But it is very specific. Claire, tell us a little bit more about the study.
Yes, so as you say, it's a huge study. It's 10 million people, and they've followed them for a number of years. And the conclusion is that ultra-processed food is linked to these 32 harmful effects: heart disease, higher risk of cancer, early death, adverse mental health. We've sort of we've had little kind of studies about this. We all sort of know that ultra-processed food isn't good for us. But this is probably the most compelling study that we've seen yet, the largest review. And what's really interesting about it is that most of the British diet is ultra-processed. I think it says there it's more than half.
It's got a sort of fancy, scary-sounding name, but basically it's anything in a packet. Yeah. Anything that you have to open.
Anything that doesn't really resemble a whole food. Anything that's, most bread's ultra-processed. The bread we buy and eat in our sandwiches is ultra-processed. Paninis, they're all...
More than half, typically, the diet. Or if you're poor or young, 80%. We do know. Look, it's tasty, it's convenient. I eat it myself. There's only so much broccoli you're going to have. But at the same time, I think you almost need an education process and somehow try to change the manufacturing to make it as safe as possible.
And I don't know if it was in this study, but I read somewhere that actually children tend to have much more ultra-processed food than adults because, again, the sort of convenience of it.
What's the things, protein bars, cereals,
Speaking of cereal, what a lovely segue. Let's go to the front page of the Daily Star. We can shoehorn it in. Let them eat flakes. Go on, Kevin, quickly.
Yeah, this is his name's Gary Pilnick. I think we'll just call him Gary Pillock. He is the £3 million a year head of Kellogg, saying eat cereal if you can't afford anything else for dinner. Well, Kellogg's is very expensive. Shift a supermarket own brand and give him a kick in the wallet for that.
Claire? Yeah, well, I entirely agree. I mean, and also it's an ultra-processed food. It's not, where are these nutrients that you need? Where's the broccoli? You can't eat that for dinner.
You're probably better off eating the cereal box and the cereal in it.
Broccoli for every meal. Kevin and Claire, you'll be with us in the next hour, but thank you so much for now. And now let's take a quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the next few days will bring further rain and it will turn colder with hill snow likely. Central and southern England will have a fairly mild but wet start tomorrow, while the north and west will be chillier with blustery showers running into western coasts. Expect coastal gales in the northwest. Southern Britain will see early rain becoming confined to the southeastern quarter of England tomorrow morning, leaving most parts with sunny spells and a scattering of showers. They'll be concentrated in the west and will turn wintry in the north and over the hills. It will be cooler than today. Central southern England will largely dry up during the afternoon, but there will be little change elsewhere. Central and southern Britain and Ireland will be windy on Friday, with gales near exposed southern and western coasts and widespread showers prolonged over southern parts for a time. Expect sleet and snow on the hills and perhaps to lower levels at times. Scotland, meanwhile, will be wet in the northwest, mostly fine elsewhere. Temperatures will be like Thursday's.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
And coming up next on Sky News at 11, police apologise over delays in catching a man who's been found guilty of murdering Emma Caldwell, who went missing in Glasgow nearly 19 years ago.